All right, welcome back to Detroit Next. Today, I am happy to say we have City Council member Fred Durhal joining us on the show, mayoral candidate, representative for District 7, and a former state lawmaker as well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We are talking about development today. I feel like you're probably one of the best candidates to talk to about this, given your work on the City Council. I guess maybe just to start, walk us through a little bit about what your kind of philosophy or approach to getting more development, in your district and across the city has been like as a city council member.
First, we can't have enough development here in the city. We are a city that is rising from the ashes, as they say. The phoenix rising from the ashes. We want to make sure it doesn't fly into the window. So we've got to keep development moving here. More development means more jobs. More jobs means more opportunity for folks to come back into the neighborhoods, pay their rent, pay their mortgage, and help stabilize our neighborhoods. And so I've been a proponent of development here in the city of Detroit just because of that opportunity, that same type of opportunity that many Detroiters moved to Detroit from back in the South, back in the day, from the South back in the day. We want to keep it going here in the city.
I think about your district, and I think back to last year. I think it was when the State of the City address was in your district at a church along Dexter Avenue, and a lot of the conversation was like, "Look at how much has happened here in this corridor. There's these parks, the rec centers, up and running. You got a new rec center coming in your district, I think, as well." What does some of that change really look like in the last couple of years, and how did we actually make that happen?
I think we made it happen because I've been very unapologetic about development, particularly in my district. When I got elected, I sat down with the mayor after having, tons of conversations with residents of what they wanted to see. They felt that my district was forgotten. We had 0 rec centers in our district. Now we've got 2. One, an $8.5 million recreation center at the Dexter Elmhurst Community Center, and the other a $20 million recreation center at the old Brennan Pool site from the Detroit Pistons. But we didn't stop there. We needed more jobs. So the old AMC site that sat vacant for over 20 years is now an automotive supplier for General Motors and creating about 300 new jobs. But affordable housing opportunities. We got a $30 million bond from the state of Wisconsin that doesn't cost taxpayers anything. And we turn the old Hawthorne Suite sites in my district to affordable housing. But you've got to be very unapologetic about development. You've got to use the necessary tools and resources that we have to keep it going. And that's what we've been pushing for.
I'm glad you brought up unapologetic. I keyed in that as well. You've said that a couple of times. Covered this a lot, the different development projects that have come through the city council over the last few years. There's always a bit of pushback from certain community groups that feel like maybe we're a little bit overbalanced. We're balanced in one direction in terms of like giving out tax subsidies and these things that, as Steve and I talk about in the front end of the show, are kind of needed to make a lot of projects like financially make sense and happen in the first place. Do you feel like, why are you kind of distinguishing yourself on that issue, being unapologetic about it? What is that in response to?
Well, I'm distinguishing myself from that because I think a lot of folks tend to stray away from development, the use of tax abatements and incentives simply because they don't understand it, frankly. They are tools to be used to spawn development here in the city of Detroit in an environment where it's expensive to do development here. We hear developers come in front of us all the time and they talk about the but for, meaning that they could spawn development in corridors that are close to us in our region for half the price
Mhm.
because the taxes are not as high. You look at our tax millage here right now, we're twice as much as our closest city in population, which is Grand Rapids. So it costs more to do development here in the city of Detroit. A lot of the buildings are a lot older. So a lot of brownfields, no green fields, definitely floating around. And so we distinguish ourselves because we know it's a necessary tool. Do we get to a point where we kind of titrate ourselves down off of how we use incentives? Absolutely. But there's also opportunities to take those developments and kind of change them so we can spawn even more development out into our communities, into our commercial corridors, create walkable communities here, and ensure that we are doing everything we can for all of our residents here in the city.
I think a lot of work has been done to make Detroit more attractive for development. Especially going back over the lifetime of the Downtown Development Authority, going back to like the late 70s. It seems like much more of an attractive place to do business. But that high property tax, as you just outlined, like that's a fundamental problem that is just kind of standing in the way of our ability to lean off using some of these tax abatements. So I mean, when do you kind of envision a future, like, how far down the road do you think it would be where we're able to, peel back on using some of these? And is there a way to do that without, cutting property taxes? I mean, how important do you think reducing the property tax burden in general is to incentivizing development, allowing development to happen?
Well, I think that's number one. Driving down property taxes here in the city, not just for developers, but for residents, is going to be one of my number one priorities. We're developing right now a comprehensive tax relief plan that
Interesting.
will cut those mills down, but also ensure everybody pays their fair share. And I'll give you an example. We have right now undeveloped land that sits here in the city of Detroit that can generate a ton of income. We see them used as parking lots and flat surfaces. They generate close to $2 million per year, but they're paying ten to $15,000 a year in taxes.
Mhm.
That's not their fair share. While the brunt of that liability goes on the residents and goes to other folks who are utilizing their businesses in productive ways that's generating revenue for the city, whether that's property tax revenue or income tax revenue. And so when we look at it, that's going to be one of my number one goals. As far as the abatements are concerned, I think they're necessary until we get to a point where we can say, all right, we've lowered property taxes here. The market has started to stabilize a little bit. The cost to do business here is not as much. Then we can start looking at that. But we also can take some of those tools and do what our residents want to see, which are vibrant commercial corridors. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot because when we look at major metropolitan cities around the nation, that's what they're doing. You go to DC, you go to Chicago, you go to some of these other places in the regions, and they are using tax abatements and tax incentives. I always use Columbus, Ohio as an example. Intel decided to come there and create thousands of jobs because Columbus gave over $2 billion in tax incentives.
Wow.
But it was a partnership between their state, their county, and that city saying, we want those jobs to come here because we also know that the economy improves when those jobs come here. And also, we'll be able to generate more income tax revenue
Mhm.
and not necessarily be reliant on other tax revenue.
That does seem to be, uh, kind of the fundamental argument is that, over a short-term period, we're gonna get a long-term benefit, right? There's a couple things in what you said there that I wanna follow up on. First of all, what can you tell us about your tax reform plan? That's pretty interesting.
Well, we're gonna release it. I know you,
Yeah,
as a reporter, you wanna get the first
I
take
do,
at it,
yeah.
but what I could say is, it's gonna be focused on making speculators pay more.
Mm,
It is gonna be, focused on reducing that tax mill, a little bit over 19. We're gonna be, 19 mills. We're gonna
mhm,
be very aggressive. Of course, it's gonna require, approval from the state legislature, which I'm not fearful of as a former legislator. Most of the folks that serve in the state senate, I serve with in the House,
yeah.
and the others I know from the House because they were either employees of those other reps or senators now. And so we've got great relationships in Lansing. And so we're going to push that forward. There's some other tweaks that we're going to do that we're not going to release as of yet. But we are working with economists on our
Mm.
plans. We're just not coming out of the sky saying we want to lower property taxes and we don't know how. We're developing that comprehensive plan, talking to some of the economists, but also developer roundtables, but also residents of what they would like to see and the type of opportunities we can provide for them in their
Would
neighborhoods.
generally the idea be, though, that you are able to, make up any lost revenue by charging speculators more, that they would cover that gap from reducing everyone else's property taxes?
Yeah, that's one of the ways. We're going to have a revenue neutral plan.
Mhm.
So it is not going to harm our general fund in any way. But the second piece is we're going to, without going too deep into it, we're going to look at how we do assessments here.
Interesting.
There are other cities that use an income-based model for assessments. So I'll give you an example. When we talk about the comps, there's two buildings that may be in the same commercial corridor. One building, okay, has 300 employees that come to work every single day. The other building is a Detroit headquarter business, but nobody comes there, so they don't frequent the corridors. The corridors get no revenue. The restaurants don't get any revenue from that business, but yet they're taxed the same because of the comp. But they're not necessarily the same. We've got to look at those businesses and those buildings that are helping us generate revenue every single day, provide a little bit of relief for them, but also subsidize that relief from those who are not providing the opportunity for the city of Detroit to generate revenue through their business.
And you've talked about expanding the DDA. Tell me more about that. Are we talking about expounding the actual boundary or creating DDA-like entities along, Dexter, Kercheval, Jefferson, these different, 6 Mile, these different corridors we're talking about?
Yeah, no, we're talking about expanding the DDA, which from our talks will not necessarily require legislative approval from Lansing, but just approval from the Detroit City Council. You've seen it happen before
Mhm.
because the DDA expanded into the central business district where you see LC at
Yep.
right now. The idea behind that is if we expand this out into commercial corridors and not just Gratiot, not just Michigan Avenue, but all out into further commercial corridors, we can create a main street in every single council district here. Everybody loves the avenue of fashion that
Mhm.
exists here, but there's opportunity to do that in every single district here in the city of Detroit. Walkable communities include this: fresh groceries or access to fresh groceries, access to a pharmacy where you don't have to drive 10 to 15 minutes to go pick up your prescription, but also retail opportunities. And what our idea behind this is when we talk about expanding the DDA, it'll also create an environment for small businesses to thrive. We can push for more entrepreneurship and creation of small business. And that helps tackle one of the biggest problems we have here in the city of Detroit, which is access to generational wealth.
One of the big things that happened last year, a little wonky, so maybe it didn't get enough attention as it should, was the creation of the fast track kind of pilot tax breaks. Kind of to your point there, and another criticism that we kind of hear about the tax development or the tax incentive kind of regime that we have here is that it's not really available for a lot of these smaller developers. So people feel like the city's kind of picking and choosing different projects. It's kind of unfair, is how even the Citizens Research Council of Michigan has said. So I don't know. Help me understand what that ordinance did. Explain it for our audience here. And have you seen any fruit out of that so far? What's the impact been so far?
Oh, absolutely. Little history behind that. Back in 2022, the Michigan legislature did another public act to expand the pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes, to allow cities or municipalities to kind of choose how they want to put them out and use those incentives for developers.
And basically, a payment in lieu of taxes works where instead of paying property taxes, you take a slice of the revenue that comes from rent or income on those, and you pay that instead. So it's a big property tax cut, basically, right?
It's not. I wouldn't necessarily say a property tax cut, but it's an abate. It's like another tax incentive or a tax abatement,
Hmm.
right? So, what it does in exchange for affordable, or at the time when it started was low income housing, you are able to get that tax break. And a lot of this was made possible, or a lot of this was important to low income housing folks who develop here, is because utility tax rates are absolutely high. So we're talking about nonprofits that used to do low income housing tax credits or got light tech, but we expanded it. And when we expanded it, now it goes all the way from 30% AMI all the way to 120% AMI. The real focus behind that, though, is that we need low income housing, we need affordable housing, but we also have what is called the missing middle.
Hmm.
And the missing middle here in the city of Detroit are folks who do not qualify for the subsidies or programs that the city may have because their income is too high, but they still don't feel like they're making enough to get by.
They're
So
not low income, but they're not high income either. They're
correct.
they're
So
kind
we
of
want to,
middle.
yeah, absolutely. So we want to expand the diversity in housing there. And we've done that. And what we have seen now, because there are two major components that we locked in. The first one is that if you got the pilot, normally with other abatements and incentives, when they expire, you're done.
Mhm.
And so you start to see what's called the abatement cliff because folks are not prepared when those abatements expire. So what happens? We see displacement because then they start to raise the rents to market rate
'Cause their taxes go up
because
a
their
lot,
taxes
right?
go back up a lot
Yeah.
dramatically, but the market has not stabilized enough for where that but for them doesn't exist anymore. And so we allowed them to renew for another 15 years as long as they commit to having affordable housing for another 15 years. And then we also did something else. We wanted to make sure that compliance was key. So we tied in 15 years of compliance to this incentive. So if you don't remain compliant within that 15 years, you don't get the incentives and we can draw it back. And so this has been a game changer thus far because we intended it to create 1,400 new affordable housing units in the city per year. Now we've got over 350 applications here and we're looking at a little bit over 1,463 units
Mm.
if they can be created. Most of them, because there was a fear, because there was a component where the fast track model didn't require council approval, but most of those incentives now, applicants who have applied are between a range of 30% and 60% AMI. So it's doing exactly what we intended it to do. We'll be able to provide more low income, affordable housing, but also workforce housing and spawn that development here.
That 30% to 60%. And again, guys, sorry, we're going in the weeds a little bit, but this stuff is all really important. AMI, area median income, right? So that is a estimate basically of the metro area, what kind of the average income for that area is. The problem is that includes communities outside of Detroit. And so that raises that up a lot. So generally affordable housing is like an 80% AMI, but that ends up being, tens of thousands of dollars more than what the average or the median income in the city is, which I think is like $37,000 or something like that. And for the whole region, I think it's closer to like 60 or 70. So that's just an example. So that 30 to 60 is important because it digs deeper into a lower, a deeper discount on the housing that people can actually afford. Tell me about how difficult it's been to get affordable housing that actually is affordable for Detroiters here living in the city.
Well, you addressed the AMI. I know we have a lot of discussion about what the true AMI is here in the
Hmm.
city of Detroit, and the fact is we don't control that. That's done federally.
Yeah.
The AMI is placed federally, um, and when we look at income levels, I think it is actually a little bit lower than 30,000, looking about 28,000.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And the definition of affordable housing is when it does not consume more than 30% of what your income is.
Hmm.
And we haven't seen that here because we've got a problem here in the city of Detroit where our tax base is not growing, but our property values are. And that goes down on renters
Hmm.
here because the cost to have those units or those developments are a lot higher based off of what the market rates are. And so it's been a challenge in a sense, but I think the city of Detroit over the past year or so, or even more, has done a tremendous job. We've created over $1 billion in affordable housing here, and a lot of that has gone to minority or smaller developers to provide that opportunity. But we've got to keep it going. And we can't have a city that is just all affordable housing, and we want it to be affordable. Let me make this point. We want to have as much affordable housing to fill the need that we have, but we also need market rate because then we can generate more revenue from the taxes for some of those higher rents. And we don't want that to be on our residents that are in the neighborhoods, our residents who are making low income. We want them to be able to afford, live, and stay here
Hmm.
and be able to get by. But I think programs like the Pilot Fast Track Ordinance is going to continue to spawn that new development. And I think we'll start to see a little bit of stabilization in the rents.
When we're talking about making sure that development brings benefits to the city, another tool that the city has created is requiring developers to hire more Detroiters on construction projects. They have to basically hire half of the man hours have to be done by Detroit residents. Um, this data is available online. A lot of the projects fall pretty short of that 50% mark, and they have to pay a fine to the city. How effective do you think we've been in making sure that Detroiters get access to some of the jobs that come along with these developments?
Yeah, so we're talking about the executive order and we're talking about 51%,
Mhm.
right? What I would say is we can do a better job. But it's easy to say that because it's more of a systemic issue that exists. We are not building a pipeline here to connect folks to some of these jobs. So what happens is these developments, they come. Right. Buildings go up, the projects start. We give out the tax abatement and incentive. The community benefits ordinance process starts. The NAC comes in, Neighborhood Advisory Committee. They say they want something that'll help their community. It gets to council. The rate might go up maybe 1 to 2 million more dollars, depending on some priorities of some council members. Uh, and what you see is then it comes time to start hiring the folks for the job. If you're part of our skilled trades community, you're saying, okay, well, I already have a dedicated workforce, but I also want to have the opportunity to get folks into and apprentices working on some of these projects. But we've seen a decline in the amount of those skilled trade jobs here
Wow.
because the pipeline is not there. So it's difficult to hire 51% here because we have not created the environment that's conducive to have those folks put directly into those jobs. And so when those fines come from the 51%, they go back to the city of Detroit. They go into DESC, Detroit Employment Solutions
Yep.
Corporation,
More workforce
and
training,
more
basically.
workforce
Yep.
training. But we're not starting at an earlier age. I believe you've got to build the pipeline. We've got to get into DPSCD. We've got to get into our charter schools and say, hey, you don't want to say, hey, everyone's not going to go to college, but you want to talk about the opportunity for a different career path. We've got one of the largest retiring populations. The baby boomers now are leaving. A lot of them have skilled trade jobs here.
Mhm.
Who are going to fill these jobs? It's got to start at an earlier age, build that pipeline, and then also create a coordinated effort with a lot of our skilled trade labor unions to plug those folks directly into there, get them as apprentices so they can become journeymen and women, and get them directly on the work site.
So it to clarify, it sounded like we're trending in the wrong direction though. It sounds like we're having fewer people who are able to do these jobs than we did in the past. Is that right?
Well, I think we do have a lot of fewer people that are able to do these jobs, but again, it comes down to building that pipeline.
Yeah.
Everyone is not going to be an operating engineer, but some folks can be electrical workers, and it's because I believe, we're doing a bad job at marketing and putting that out there, and we've got to improve our relationships with the folks who get folks to work, right? And That's going to take some very deep thought. It's not a change that's going to happen overnight. But if we're talking about a city where we're competitive with our workforce, right? We're starting at an early age. That'll allow us to attract more businesses to come here, more development to come here, and be better off for our residents as far as income and stabilizing our neighborhoods.
One of the bigger social programs that came as a result of the federal pandemic relief, the ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act, of which we got, $830 million almost. It created Skills for Life and some other job training programs. Skills for Life is cool because it people who are out of the workforce, it paid them to go back to school and get trained and re-enter the workforce. That money is going to be expiring soon. What do you, and not just for that, but for a lot of different programs. You talk about rec centers. A lot of ARPA money has gone into fixing rec centers. If you're the mayor, how concerned are you about losing some of that discretionary money that was used in creative ways to address problems like the talent pipeline?
Well, I mean, it's concerning. No city gets $827 million coming to them, where they can kind of fix some holes and create some programs. And so, what you're looking at right now, even as we're in budget season right now, is finding ways to find out what programs still work, what we need to keep, and looking at our priorities. Right. As mayor, when you look forward, the next mayor is not going to probably be the most popular mayor in the world because you're going to have to make some tough decisions. That's one of the reasons that we're running because one, we have budgetary experience from the state level, and now I chair budget, finance, and audit for the city. You're going to have to make some tough decisions relative to priorities, and we're going to be kind of at a status quo because we're not seeing our revenues grow. They're going to kind of trickle down and probably remain flat. But I'm not really concerned. Not yet, but I'm concerned enough to run for mayor because I know we're in a very vulnerable state, and we're going to need leadership who can make decisions not just based off of, ideas and creating new programs. We've got too many programs as it is that may not be efficient. We've got to look at what's efficient, what works for residents, and what really helps them.
Mhm. One big development decision that will come down in the near future, I don't know if it'll be this year or next year when the next mayor is in office, is the Renaissance Center and the plan that Dan Gilbert and GM are working on. I mean, I've heard a lot of great feedback on what they want to do in terms of, building a public promenade and making Detroit more like a Navy Pier like thing. I was in Chicago last weekend, and it just our riverfront is very far behind when you compare it to other, even some of our partners in Ohio. What do you think about that plan? What can you tell us about what they'll be looking for in terms of tax incentives from the city? Have you made a decision one way or another on how you might end up on that one?
Well, I think it's too early to tell what they'll need.
It's already
Um,
changed a couple times already, I
It's
think.
changed a couple times. There was legislation up in the Michigan legislature last legislative session, the SOAR program, obviously, and so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like right now, and that is subject to change. I know from the end of Dan Gilbert and some others, they have committed to put some of their personal money into the project to ensure that it comes into fruition. What I would say is when I look at the Renaissance Center, and I've made my mind up, I do believe it needs to change, particularly with some of those proposed plans that they have, those two towers that are closest to the river. We need access to our riverfront. We have the Joe Louis Greenway now, which is connecting. You've got Ralph C. Wilson Park along the riverfront. We've got the hotels over there as well. The
Water
residents at
Square.
Water
Yep.
Square, and we're looking to expand the Greenway all the way to Belle Isle, right? And that pathway. I'm sorry, the riverfront all the way to Belle Isle. We've got to change how we're doing business. That's one of our most underutilized assets here. I visit Navy Pier often. It's not just the Ferris wheel, but they have access to Shed Aquarium,
Mhm.
the Adler Planetarium. It's just like a whole campus and a great experience. We've got the opportunity to do that with a building that's underutilized as well. Folks, frankly, are not coming in the Renaissance Center. It was built to be a city within the city and kind of block out folks from coming into the greater downtown area in the central business district, right? So we've got to find better uses for that. And we're hearing about housing, and I'm all for that, particularly if it's affordable housing or mixed income housing.
When you look at the riverfront and the development that's happened there, the Renaissance Center and the Uniroyal site are kind of the two big missing pieces. So my last question for you would just be, have you heard any interest in that Uniroyal site now that it's available again? What would you like to see go in there?
I don't know. I think it's just so much opportunity. I think we'll have to wait and see. I think it's too early to tell. But the Royal site is a huge area that we could do some great things off of the riverfront. Hopefully we can attract developers to come here. I don't want to say necessarily what I want to see out of it, but we want developers to kind of bring some ideas as well of what kind of business or what kind of development could go there that'll help our residents. One thing I will say is, whatever goes there, I want it to be accessible to residents. I want it to be somewhere where we can bring families, and that's what we've got to focus here on the city of Detroit. Our downtown is great, but I think we can make it a little bit more family friendly as well. I say that as a husband and a father of two kids. And that's not to say it's not friendly at all. Campus Marshes is down there and all that great stuff. But I love to expand it and provide more opportunity for our youth off of the riverfront.
There's so many other topics we will have to get into another time. Thank you for diving in the weeds with me.
Thank
We love to
you.
talk about public transit and safety and education and all those things too. But that will wrap up our conversation today. Fred Durhal, everyone, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Detroit Next is a community-led project from Bridge Detroit and Detroit is Different, which means that we can't do this work without you. We need your support. If you have a question or a comment and want to participate in this process throughout the year, give us a call. We have a phone line set up at 313-284-6407. Leave us a message and we'll play it on the podcast. If you like what we're doing, head to bridgedetroit.com and subscribe to our newsletters. All of that content, again, is free, no paywalls for anybody. We're trying to make this as accessible as possible. Head to our YouTube channel to get full episodes and interviews along with extra content throughout the year. You can also find the audio version of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and DetroitNext.podbean.com. We're going to be doing this all year long, so stay with us. Follow Bridge Detroit and Detroit is Different on your favorite social media platforms and take this ride with us. Thanks.